Hello and welcome to your daily dose of Satoshi's news. Today's date is Friday the 2nd of February 2024, the year of 1 million transactions per second or more. Buy BSV.live, probably the best place to buy Bitcoin SV online, the original protocol and genuine Bitcoin. Somebody has just sent me this article by Wired magazine. This looks very interesting indeed. Let's get into it, let's go through it. So here we go. So this is titled, Craig Wright claims he's Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto. Can he prove it in court? A judge will determine whether computer scientist Craig Wright is the inventor of Bitcoin. The network's future may hang in the balance. Well, the SegWit protocol might hang in the balance, but Bitcoin's won't. Satoshi Nakamoto is the founding father of cryptocurrency. It's not currency, it's Bitcoin, it's money. And a mystery, so they say. In October 2008, Nakamoto gave Bitcoin to the world. Then he disappeared. To this day, nobody knows who Nakamoto is. Amongst the speculation, one man stepped forward. Craig Wright, an Australian computer scientist who has since 2016 maintained he is Nakamoto. Actually, that is not correct again. He was outed by Gizmodo when Wired magazine themselves in 2015 and then 2016 said, okay, well, maybe you might be right. So he maintained he's Satoshi Nakamoto. Now he has to prove it in court. On February 5th, the trial will begin in the UK High Court, the purpose of which is to challenge Wright's claim to Satoshihood. The case is being brought by the Crypto Open Patent Alliance, a non-profit consortium of crypto and tech firms, in response to a slew of lawsuits filed by Wright against Bitcoin developers, that's BTC, SegWit developers, not Bitcoin, and other parties, in which he is trying to assert intellectual property rights over Bitcoin as its ostensible creator. In its complaint, COPA claims that Wright's behaviour has had a chilling effect, obstructing progress of Bitcoin by scaring away developers. It is seeking a declaration that Wright does not own the copyright to the white paper that first proposed Bitcoin and did not author the original code. In an injunction preventing him from saying otherwise, in effect, COPA is asking the court to rule that Wright is not Nakamoto. The verdict will have direct implications for a tangle of interlocking cases, which will determine whether Wright can prevent developers from working on Bitcoin without his permission and dedicate the terms under which the Bitcoin system can be used. The stakes are very high. We can say that again. Largest court case in financial history. Says a representative of Bitcoin Legal Defense Fund, a non-profit that helps Bitcoin developers defend against legal action, who asked to remain nameless for fear of legal retaliation from Wright. In the eyes of the law, they claim Wright is asking for ultimate control over Bitcoin network. He's not actually. Nobody controls it. He's asking to maintain it as a commodity network. And these criminal actors are defrauding everyone. That's what's really going on. Wright declined to be interviewed for this story, well, too right, because there's a case going on. In his 2008 white paper, it should say, released in the shadow of a global financial meltdown, Nakamoto sketched a vision for a new electronic money, a peer-to-peer payment system that would obviate the need for troublesome intermediaries like banks. As it should do. In January 2009, they sent the first Bitcoin transaction. A little more than 2 years later, they disappeared without a trace. He disappeared without a trace. The hunt for Nakamoto begins. The absence of a leader, says software developer and early Bitcoin adopter Jameson Lopp, has been an asset to Bitcoin in the period since, making it robust by demanding it evolve under a system of unspoiled anarchy. Yeah, really? Not really. So what these lot have done is they've basically centralised it and turned it into an economically worthless security offering. They have changed the protocol fundamentally. It is no longer Bitcoin. Craig wants Bitcoin back. Free from the overbearing influence of a founder, anyone that volunteered their time to work on Bitcoin could have a say in its direction. Yeah, I mean, nobody should have a right in its direction. It should stay as it is. Yet Wright's claim to be Nakamoto threatens to complicate the matters. What? Because he wants Bitcoin to remain as it was, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, not digital gold, not digital dog shit. Wright was first nominated as a potential candidate by both Wired and Gizmodo on the same day in December 2015. The original story, based on a trove of leaked documents, proposed that Wright had either invented Bitcoin or is a brilliant hoaxer who very badly wants us to believe he did. A few days later, Wired published a second story pointing to discrepancies in the evidence that supported the latter interpretation. What? of their own evidence. Wright did not respond initially to reports that he was Nakamoto, although he did largely scrub his online accounts. By the following year, though, he had begun to present himself publicly as Bitcoin's creator. He has tried on multiple occasions through various means to categorically prove the claim, earning himself a band of supporters who swear by his credibility. In 2016, Wright was able to convince Gavin Andresen, an early contributor to the Bitcoin's underlying software, and John Matonis, former director of the Bitcoin Foundation, an advocacy group. His most vocal advocate is billionaire Calvin Ayre, whose venture capital firm recently acquired a controlling stake in one of Wright's businesses. Otherwise, Wright has failed to alter the prevailing opinion that the mystery of the Bitcoin founder remains unsolved. Only a minority of Bitcoiners claims LOP, that those that really want for there to be a Satoshi figure buy into Wright's story. Andresen recently walked back his position, through pressure from these bastards. I know what it's. He said, I know it was a mistake to trust Craig Wright as much as I did. I regret getting sucked into the who is or isn't Satoshi game, he wrote February 2023 in a revision to his earlier blog post, because he was threatened to do so and intimidated into doing so, coerced into doing so. Since 2019, Wright, and again, like Gavin has actually backtracked on it. He said, what I said back in 2016, I stand by. That's what he said. Since 2019, Wright has seemingly reached for litigation as the primary means of asserting his claim. He has filed a sequence of lawsuits against the developers that maintain the Bitcoin codebase and organisations that deal in Bitcoin, who he has accused of breaching his copyright, because they've changed the protocol, and libel cases against individuals who have challenged him publicly. In the absence of a patent, claims Lindsay Gledhill, IP partner at law firm Harper James, Wright's strategy seems to be to use legal action to cobble together a basket of rights that perform a similar function when taken together. To assert ownership over Bitcoin, Wright is again, they're using this to spin the words like he's trying to take ownership of Bitcoin. Absolute bastards. Wright has attempted to use the wrong tool to do the job of a patent. She claims that is what it boils down to. 3 of the cases filed by Wright against crypto exchanges, Coinbase and Kraken, and a group of Bitcoin developers are predicated specifically on the idea that he is Nakamoto. Therefore, the judge presiding over the case, Edward James Miller, has arranged for the COPA proceedings to come first. It will serve as a preliminary issue trial in the lingo of the court, whose outcome will be respected in the interlocking disputes too. The identity issue is fundamental, says Rachel Alexander, an IP specialist at law firm Wiggin. If COPA can nip that in the bud, it makes the broader claims much more difficult to continue with. The COPA case is expected to run for 6 weeks. Wright is set to give testimony earlier on, with much of the rest of the trial to be spent examining the credibility of the documentary evidence in which his claim to be Nakamoto depends. The main allegation is that Wright has forged or tampered with many of these documents, or make them seem as if they were created at a particular point in time. COPA has filed extensive evidence that we believe shows Wright has fabricated and forged, says a COPA representative who asked that their name not be published to prevent personal litigation retaliation from Wright. In reports submitted to the court, they claim COPA systematically reviews and dismantles the documents, pointing to acronyms that undermine his claim to have been Satoshi Nakamoto. Figures from the Bitcoin world, including LOP and blogger podcaster Arthur Van Pelt, have attempted previously to catalogue Wright's alleged misrepresentations. Van Pelt calls the story Wright has constructed a Potokim village and his behaviour as Satoshi Nakamoto cosplay. Wright has displayed these kinds of criticisms as basically fluff. In September 2022, he told a court in Norway he had never changed any documents or manipulated any documents. That one of the UK's High Court is allowing COPA to allege forgery is significant, Gledhill claims. This, she adds, is not an accusation the court will automatically permit. The courts will not let you make vague suggestions. They are strict rules. COPA would not be allowed to accuse Wright of forgery, in other words, without the court finding that it has grounds to do so. The dispute over the documents will be the heart of the case, says Alexander. That will be the key issue of the court to grapple with. If the court judge concludes that Wright is guilty of forgery, not only would it damage his prospects for proceeding in the COPA case and those that depend on its outcome, but it could also lead to him being charged with contempt of court, she says. The penalty for this could be fine, imprisonment, or both, Alexander adds. On January 24th, 2 weeks before the trial was due to begin, Wright presented COPA with a surprise settlement offer. By the terms of the proposal, Wright would halt his own legal action in the connected cases and forfeit the right to pursue IP rights over Bitcoin. In return, COPA would have to recognize Wright as Satoshi Nakamoto and agree to various other stipulations. In a tweet, COPA said it would hard pass on the offer, which it claims featured loopholes that would allow Wright to sue people over again. All over again. COPA hopes that a ruling in its favour will create a safe space, says the representative, in which developers cannot be bullied or cowed into halting work on cryptocurrency technologies. They're committing securities fraud on the people. While a victory for COPA would effectively represent a return to business as usual, a win for Wright would mean the opposite. If the court finds that Wright is in fact the author of the Bitcoin white paper, that he is Nakamoto, it would pave a clear route to victory in the connected cases in which Wright is the plaintiff. In the most high profile of those cases, known informally as the database rights case, Wright accuses Bitcoin developers of breaching his IP rights by making fundamental changes to the Bitcoin system without applying for a license or authorization. In effect, he is seeking a ruling that would make it illegal for developers to iterate on the Bitcoin code without his say-so, and that would afford him control over the main software used to plug into the Bitcoin system. The impact would also be felt globally. Each country will analyse a copyright case on their own basis, says James Marsden, a senior associate at law firm Dentons. But the general principles beneath copyright law are harmonised by an agreement adopted by the overwhelming majority of countries. In other words, if a UK court ruled that Wright is Nakamoto, he'll likely be seen as such by courts around the world. The Bitcoin network, says Lopp, is architected in such a way that parties running the client software that prop up the payment system as so-called nodes cannot be forced to adopt code changes. By design, alterations may only be proposed, not enforced. That means Wright could not be able to make unilateral changes to Bitcoin. If he wins, though, Wright could make it harder for developers to collaborate freely on the Bitcoin codebase to spoil the unspoil anarchy by welding the affirmation of his IP rights to file lawsuits against those that do not seek a license. Developers on the project may have to operate anonymously to protect themselves. From defrauding the customers. We'd have to become much more hardcore cypherpunk, says Lopp. If fewer and fewer developers are willing to risk legal action, the health and usability of the system could deteriorate over time. The risk is that Bitcoin could slide towards obscurity. No, it won't, because Bitcoin will take off the genuine one anyway. Bitcoin would be far better off, claims Lopp, if the identity of its creator remained a mystery. No, that was only necessary up until 1st of January 2020. Bitcoin is far from perfect, he says, because they've screwed it up, but without a Satoshi figure, whether that be Wright or anyone else, developers will never be prevented from working on it, or working to improve it. Satoshi's great gift to the world was Bitcoin, says Lopp. His second greatest gift was to disappear, and as Lopp said, the only way to make Bitcoin safe is to put Satoshi in a box. I mean, as if. Absolutely outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Anyway, there we go. Remember, largest court case in financial history coming up on the 5th of February 2024. Stay tuned, we'll bring you more, and until then, be aware, take care, stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.